Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Dsgb Fantasy Football League Weekly Recap. I'm your host and commissioner, AST1. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and follow me if you like content like this. Let's not waste any more time and let's get into the recap. Now let's go over some league notes after Week 11 action. With 3 weeks remaining in this fantasy season, the race to the playoffs is heating up and taking shape. The current standings as of Week 11 have the football team as the #1 team. They are followed by Menace to the League, who is on his heels for that top spot. Dream Team Redemption moved up to 3rd place after defeating the red-hot Bristol Vikings. Z-Boys is at #4. And Bristol Vikings round out the top 5. Hancock County, Georgia moves up 1 spot to the 6th spot, with the Apocalypse dropping 1 spot to 7th place. Summertime comes in the 8th spot. NY Giants is at the 9th spot. Crimson Ballers is in the 10th spot. Team Harding is ranked 11th. Team Untouchables is at the bottom of the standings, and he is officially eliminated from playoff contention. Here's a look at the projected playoff matchups as of Week 11 if they started today. The football team is currently holding on to the #1 seed by virtue of a head-to-head win over Menace to the League and would get the bye. Next in the first projected playoff bracket matchup would be the 5th seed Bristol Vikings matched up against the 4th seed Z-Boys, followed by the 6th seed Hancock County, Georgia taking on the 3 seed Dream Team Redemption. And rounding out the projected playoff bracket would be the 7th seed The Apocalypse versus the #2 seed Menace to the League. Next, let's take a quick look at the top 5-point scorer in the league. #1, we have Menace to the League. #2, we have NY Giants. #3, we have Dream Team Redemption. #4, we have the football team. And rounding the top 5 is Crimson Ballers. Moving right along, let's look at the top 5 performers from Week 11 in fantasy. #5, we have Penn State Nittany Lions product, running back Saquon Barkley. Barkley has had a rough year putting up consistent fantasy numbers. However, he is still one of the best running backs in the league. Barkley ran on 14 carries for 83 yards to go along with 4 receptions for 57 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in a win against division rivals the Washington Commanders. Barkley had 30 fantasy points on the day. #4, we have University of West Alabama, wide receiver the Cheetah Tyreek Hill. Hill, who was also on this list in Week 1 and Week 6, had an impressive outing with 10 receptions for 146 yards and 1 touchdown. Tyreek gave the Raiders problems all day with his big play ability. Hill had 30.6 fantasy points on the day. #3, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide product, wide receiver Calvin Ridley. Ridley, who has had a hot and cold season, was cooking all day long against the Tennessee Titans. Ridley had 7 receptions for 103 yards with 2 touchdowns. Ridley even had 1 carry for 18 yards. Ridley had 31.1 fantasy points on the day. #2, we have the Iowa State Cyclones product, quarterback Brock Purdy, aka Mr. Irrelevant. Purdy, who made the list in Week 5 as well, was anything but irrelevant against Tampa Bay. Purdy went 21 of 25 for 333 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also added 4 carries for 14 yards. Purdy had 32.4 fantasy points on the day. And at #1, we have the Clemson Tigers product, quarterback Trevor Sunshine Lawrence. Lawrence, who was projected to make a massive jump in year 3, took a while to find his groove. On Sunday, Lawrence showed a glimpse of what he's capable of against the Tennessee Titans by going 24 of 32 for 262 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He also added 5 carries for 17 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Lawrence was on full display on Sunday. Lawrence had 35.7 fantasy points on the day. Next, I'll give a shout out to the Jacksonville Jaguars fans. You had 2 players make the top 5 fantasy football performers list. Now let's look ahead at Week 12 matchups preview. First, we have the 6 and 5 Hancock County, Georgia versus the 5 and 6 Summertime. Hancock County had an intense game against the Apocalypse in Week 11. I personally want to give a shout out to MVS for dropping that deep bomb from my homeboy on Monday night. That drop ultimately secured my victory. On the other side, we have Summertime, who is coming off an impressive win against Crimson Ballers in Week 11. Summertime snapped a 2-game losing streak with last week's win and will look to continue his push for a spot in the playoffs. Should be an exciting matchup with both teams looking for playoff action. Next, we have the 1-10 Team Untouchables versus the 5-6 NY Giants. Team Untouchables, with last week's loss, officially became eliminated from the playoff contention. Team Untouchables, since his Week 5 win over Hancock County, Georgia, is on a 6-game losing streak. Untouchables will look to finish the season strong or potentially play spoiler the rest of the way. On the other side, he will face the second highest scorer in the league, NY Giants, who was the high scorer for Week 11. NY Giants snapped a 3-game skid in Week 11's win. NY Giants will look to finish the season strong and push for a spot in the playoffs. Next, we have the 3-8 Team Harding versus the 6-5 The Apocalypse. Team Harding is 1-3 in his last 4 games and will look to get back in the win column and make a push for a playoff spot. Team Harding will need some help and win out, but it won't be easy with his last 3 opponents currently in position for playoff spots. On the flip side, we have the Apocalypse, who is also 1-3 in his last 4 games and is also coming off a loss against Hancock County, Georgia. The Apocalypse will look to get back on track and continue his push into the playoffs. Next, we have the 8-3 football team versus the 7-4 Bristol Vikings. The football team is coming off a tough loss against Z-Boys. The football team is still sitting in the driver's seat as the number 1 seed. He will look to get back in the win column in Week 12. However, his opponent is Bristol Vikings, who was on an impressive 6-game win streak until Dream Team Redemption put a stop to that. Bristol Vikings over the next 2 weeks play against the number 1 and number 2 teams respectively in the standings. Bristol Vikings is in control of his own destiny if he wins out the rest of his schedule. Can he be the dark horse in the league and secure the number 1 seed and a playoff bye? Next, we have the 3-8 Crimson Ballers versus the 7-4 Dream Team Redemption. Crimson Ballers is coming off a heartbreaking loss against Summertime in Week 11. Crimson Ballers has to win out and need some help to get into the playoffs. However, over the next 3 weeks, he will face off against the number 3 team, the number 1 team, and the number 2 team as of Week 11. On the other side, we have Dream Team Redemption, who is currently on the league's longest win streak at 3. Comes in with a lot of momentum and confidence after taking down the hottest team in the league, Bristol Vikings. Dream Team has a favorable schedule over the next 3 weeks and will look to be in position for the number 1 seed in case someone slips up. And finally, we have the game of the week for Week 12. We have the 8-3 Menace to the League versus the 7-4 Z-Boys. Menace to the League got some early Thanksgiving turkey in the form of Z-Boys taking down the football team in Week 11. Menace to the League has a 3-1 record over his last 4 games. Menace will look to hold on to the number 2 seed and get back into the top spot. However, it won't be easy as he will face the giant killer Z-Boys in Week 12. Z-Boys, who was chirping in the league chat after his impressive win against the football team, is riding high and feeling good. However, he is going against the highest scorer in the league, Menace. Should be an exciting matchup with both teams could potentially see each other again in the playoffs. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy this content. Comment below who you think will win their matchup this week. Until next time, AST1 signing off.